Hi guys, welcome to this really quick presentation on adjectives and adverbs. So to get started, you probably have heard of adjectives and adverbs. They're one of the, or two, I guess, of the 8 parts of speech. Adjectives are used to modify nouns and pronouns. So they will answer questions such as what kind, how much, which one, and how many. Anytime that you are describing a noun or a pronoun, so you're talking about color, you're talking about shape, you're talking about size, you're talking about how many, those are all adjectives. They are also often used after linking verbs, and you see some of those examples underneath the box there. We have the efficient student. So what kind of student do we have? We have an efficient one. What kind of computer? A new computer. You may even say which one, the new one. And the third example, my boss is honest. Notice the adjective comes after the noun in this case because of the linking verb is. So my boss is honest. Honest is describing the boss, and so that's considered an adjective. Adverbs are a little different in that they will modify a verb, another adjective, or another adverb. And so probably the way that you learned about this in elementary and high school was that most adverbs will end in ly, and that's usually the case. They will answer questions like how, where, when, how much, and how often. So if you are looking at just any verb, how did they work? You see the example down at the bottom. They worked efficiently. They worked hard. Hard doesn't exactly end in an ly, but it talks about how they worked. The second example there, the computer never works well. How does it work? Well, in this case, they added the word never, but doesn't work well. And then the next one, the third example is when it's describing another adjective. So we have the adjective honest. So her boss is honest, but he's completely honest. So how honest is he? He's completely honest. He's totally honest. Those are words that will describe the adjective, and so they are considered adverbs. And actually, if you go up to that second example, the computer never works well. Never is an adverb also because it talks about when, so it never works well. If you go back to the pink box, there are some other examples, and those are other examples of adverbs that don't always end in ly, and so they can be kind of tricky sometimes, but they do act as adverbs. Now, sometimes what happens is we may use an adjective when we should use an adverb, or vice versa. And so these are just some quick little examples that we can use. And if we always go back to the definition that an adjective describes a noun or a pronoun, and an adverb describes a verb, an adjective or another adverb, we should be able to figure these out fairly quickly. And sometimes you'll notice that you probably speak incorrectly. And some of those are pretty frequently used incorrectly, like the words real, really, sure, and surely, and we'll take a look at those at the end of this. So that first example talks about Theodore Roosevelt and what he said. He said, speak soft or speak softly. And we don't even need to read the rest of the sentence because we're talking about how he's speaking being a verb, and so we need to speak softly and carry a big stick. Second example is one of these most commonly confused, the word real, which is an adjective, and really, which is an adverb. So Babe Ruth was real lucky to reach second base, or he was really lucky to reach second base. And the answer is really lucky. We're describing the adjective lucky, and so because we're describing an adjective, we need to use the adverb really. Third example, after Waldo gave up onions, his breath improved immense or immensely. How did it improve? It's describing the word improved, which is a verb, and so we need to use the word immensely. Sentence 4, my instructor smiled hearty or heartily. And again, in this case, we're talking about how the instructor smiled, and so it was heartily, describes the verb. The second example, after I learned to use adverbs correct or correctly. And again, we need to ask, what is it that we're describing? Are we describing the word adverbs? Are we describing how they learned them? And the answer is, it's describing the word learned, which is a verb, so it's correctly. So to read that sentence again, my instructor smiled heartily after I learned to use verbs correctly. The fifth example, I'm real happy or I'm really happy to be in this class. The answer is really, because we are describing the word happy, which is an adjective. And then we have the next one, which is I'm sure or surely glad to be almost done. And the answer there is surely, for the same reason that it was happy. So most of the time we will use really and surely. Very rarely will we use real or sure. Here's another commonly confused word, which is good and well. And one of the easy ways to think about it is that good is an adjective and well is an adverb. So anytime we're describing a person, a thing, a pronoun, an idea, we use the word good. Anytime we're describing how someone does things, then we're using the word well. So he displays good skill, describing what kind of skill. So it's good, it's an adjective. He is good at writing. And so we're talking about him being good at writing, and so we use the adjective good. He felt good, or the rain felt good on my burning skin. Rain here is the adjective, and the rain isn't good, but it's how it's feeling. And this gets a little bit tricky because felt, in this case, is actually considered a linking verb. And a linking verb is something that's not an action verb, obviously, so it's not something I can do. And so when you look at this sentence, the rain felt good on my burning skin. The rain isn't going and doing the feeling here, and so that's why it's not an action verb. It's a linking verb instead. And so that's why we use the word good. So we use the word good because, number one, it's a linking verb. And the reason why felt is a linking verb is because it's not actually doing the action. Rain isn't doing any feeling. And so it's considered a linking verb. There are other linking verbs that can act as both an action or a linking. For example, we have the word smell. We have the word taste. So any of those feeling words, or the senses, maybe is a better way to put that, are considered linking verbs or action verbs depending on how they're used in a sentence. And what you have to ask yourself, is the subject doing those actions? And if they are, then it's an action verb. If they're not, then it's linking. And so again, going over to well is an adverb. And so looking at the example, the professor teaches well. So how is it that the professor teaches? How is it that Waldo supervises? And we use the word well because it's describing the verb. Well will also indicate physical health. And so she feels well after her visit to the internist, which is a doctor. Hilda looks well. So if you're looking at any of those physical health issues, you're going to use the word well instead of good. How do you feel today? I feel well. How are you today? I'm well. Not I'm good, but I'm well. So if any of you say that, you might want to fix that to make it grammatically correct. And then we did talk already about those commonly confused with sure and surely, real and really, and those are just an additional note, I guess, is down at the bottom of this presentation for that. Okay, here's a visual of what I was talking about before with the linking versus the action verb. So you can have a verb that will act as both a linking and an action, and here's kind of how you tell the difference. So that first example of the puppy smelling, we're using that as a verb, an action verb. So he smells well. He's going around and he's using his nose and he's very good at smelling. So that's what that is illustrating. If you said that he smells good, it would mean that you'd put that little wiener dog in a bun as like a hot dog. So the hot dog smells good, is what you would be saying if you were using that as a linking verb. So it kind of depends. If you're talking about food smelling good, then that's exactly what it means. If the dog is smelling well, it means he's going down on the ground and doing a really good job of smelling. So there's two different, I guess, uses of that word, depending if you're using it as a linking verb or as an action verb. All right, some more examples. Number one, she seemed to be in a real good mood while typing the essay. And we need to look at real and we need to look at good. If you remember before, good mood is okay because it's an adjective, it's describing her mood. We need to look at the word real though. So because we're describing another adjective, we need to say really. So she's in a really good mood. Number 2, the new computers sure cost a lot less than the old models. Our problem here is with the word sure. We're modifying the verb cost, and so we need to say surely cost a lot more. And then the third example, the copy machine in the office works real good. Sometimes people speak like that. We want to change that though, because we're talking about how it's working. So it's working really well. We use really because it's describing another adjective or another adverb. So we need it to say really well. Hopefully that was helpful to you. Again, there's more information in your textbook. There's also a quiz that will follow.